fine. That's why we're just doing options for everyone, depending on what people feel comfortable with, so.
It'd be tough for me to attend school board meetings in person and not come to the redevelopment meeting. So.
Yep. Let's see. I gotta figure out how to get our screen going for screen sharing because I got documents. Craig, are you able to get into Google Drive and see all the documents?
Good question.
And I'll have them up on my screen here in just a few, if you don't.
Can anybody hear me?
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Steve, are you able to access Google Drive and see documents?
I'm on my cell phone, so I don't know.
I will share my screen when we have different things pulled up. So the first thing we'll be looking at, of course, are the meeting minutes. So let me. Hi, Brian.
Oops. Hello.
How's it going?
It's going okay.
Hey, Brian.
Hi.
I'm on there, Rachel. I'm not sure it's RDC or historic preservation. Let's see. We're looking for May minute or April minutes.
Yes, if you look in the RDC file.
I don't see the RDC file. That's an issue. Let me see what this is. Yeah.
You just see Historic Preservation Commission? Okay, I shared it again, or I shared it with your town email address. It had been shared with your IUPUI email address.
I'm looking at it shared with me. And I don't have an RDC folder.
Okay, can you check your town of Pendleton email?
Hang on.
Sorry, I had my thumb in front of the camera.
I did that, Rachel, and I've got the same thing. October, November, December, August, June, May, February, and January.
Or
RDC.
RDC? You don't have a 2020 folder?
2019 is all I've got.
Huh.
Hang on, now we got it. Here we go.
You got it now?
Folder's empty.
Can you try refreshing it?
Sure. There we go. We got May, March, and February.
Yep. Go to the May folder.
Got it. Was I the only one that couldn't get this, or does everybody have it? And everybody have access to that folder? Steve?
I don't, because I'm on my cell phone. So
Okay. Did you happen to see the minutes from the last meeting?
was that from what, February?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I reviewed them.
Okay. And the folks there at the meeting, Rachel, have they seen it?
Yes, I
Yeah.
printed them out hard copies, so they're able to look at those.
Thank you.
Yes, you know, and I'm having problems with sharing my screen for some reason. But if Steve's already seen them, then I guess we need to officially start the meeting though, Craig. So if you want to.
Okay. So it's a little after 6. We will call the meeting to order for the May Redevelopment Commission meeting. Let's have a roll call, please.
Bill Hutton here. Dave Craven's here.
What was that? I couldn't hear it.
Dave Craven's here.
Okay, Dave. And who's at the desk?
It's just me, and then Bill Hutton is also here. And Dave.
And Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And then Craig Campbell here.
And Steve Denny here.
Okay, so we have a quorum. And has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Let's take one more minute here. Let me glance at this. I've been through most of it. Okay, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as written?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, minutes have been approved. Old business. What do we got, Rachel? Community Sports and Wellness Center.
Yes, there was a little hiccup with this project, just so everyone is aware and is on the same page in case questions come up. I am aware that the Klipsch Card Group was working with Loth. That was their general contractor, and they have parted ways. There were some issues that some subcontractors were not getting paid, but as far as I know, at this point in time, all subcontractors have been paid up. There might be one that has not, that we're working through that. Not necessarily the town is working through that, but Klipsch Card was working through that. And they have hired a new company to be their general contractor. So work kind of stopped for a little while, but it's picked back up, and they're saying that they should be opening in August. So again, if something comes up, we can provide you with more information if needed, but really that was kind of the general story of what happened.
So everybody's okay with everything? We're good?
As far as I'm aware, I think there's probably going to be some legal action between Loth and Klipsch Card, I'm sure, at some point. So when we have information, we'll share it with you guys, just so you're in the loop with things. But as far as like the town's involvement in it, our electric company, we installed all of the things that we were supposed to install, and it's all done, and we're out of that site now. We don't have anything left to do. I know our guys were pretty proud of getting it done and getting them up and going. So, and the structure is looking great. I drove out there yesterday and was taking a look at it, and it's a beast of a structure, and it's coming along. I'm sure you see it all the time,
Yes,
you know, heading out that way.
It's going to be huge, and it's going to be nice, and it's just, I'm glad to hear that we got somebody else on the phone to finish it off, because I was really worried that that's what it's going to be like.
No, it's still moving forward, so that's a good thing. I did meet with a gentleman who from a firm called On Point, and he is working with the Klipsch Card Group on finding either a tenant or a buyer for some of those parcels that are up front. So there is an on-point sign out there if you guys have driven by it and seen it. So there's someone working on that piece of it too, so it'll be interesting to see what they bring to the table. So, other than that, I really don't have anything else to update on the Wellness Center, but it's coming along. They tell me August is when they are looking to open.
Rachel, I have a question.
Mhm.
You know, the town of Pillen, we have insurance on these contractors to where if they leave or travel, a bond or something. Usually there's a production insurance, a bond or something, especially with the virus going on, companies closing down. There's been several construction companies that go out of business. The building is set there for many months, it deteriorates and things go amid. These contractors should be providing insurance. Are they providing insurance?
Jeff, would you be able to speak to that question at all? I'm not familiar with that side of it.
I know when I build buildings and I hire contractors, I use Frederick's lot, and I get an insurance bond, and that way if something happens,
Yeah.
I as an owner would be.
And I don't think we have an insurance bond that I've seen on that. As we're not one of the parties, I think we're probably pretty good as far as safety goes from liability. But I'll review the contracts again and get back with you. I just don't know.
Thank you.
Now, the town is also protected. We worked this out when we signed all the papers, that if Klipsch Card doesn't come through with the building of the building, the town is protected. I forget the exact details of it, but they pay us back everything we put in at it.
That's right. That was the contract was drafted very pro town. So it was, I'm pretty comfortable with where we are on this, despite the unpleasantries.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the update, Rachel, because I've been out there several times and I thought the same thing. I thought, boy, it doesn't look like they're making much progress. I didn't realize all the issues were going on.
I should have spoke up before we started talking about the health center. I did promise Brian that I would ask to go ahead and have his presentation first. Brian, I know you love Pendleton and would love to just be on a webinar all weekend with you. If the board doesn't mind, can we have report presentation come up next?
Yeah. Are you going to bring it up, or do you want me to show it on my screen, or how do you want to kind of go through the presentation?
Let's try that first.
Okay.
I'm having to share my screen tonight. I'm not sure
Okay.
what's happening with my set.
Okay. There we go. Do you guys see it on your screen?
Yes, there it is.
Yes.
All right. I love it when technology actually works occasionally. So, well, I wish I could be there in person. We are still not traveling to meetings at this point in time, as we still try to figure out how to get everybody back in the office. But we've got technology now, so we'll plow through it like this. If you've got any questions, feel free to stop me as we go, or we can take questions at the end. This is the second year that this new rule has been in place, where each year the Redevelopment Commission needs to have a presentation and have the overlapping taxing units invited to attend. And so that's what we will go through tonight. Pretty high level information, and some of it's just informational requirements of the statute. And then if you've got any questions, we can talk through those as well. So with that, one of the requirements is simply listing of the different members that are on the Redevelopment Commission. That's slide 2. Slide 3 that's us. So we're Baker Tilly. I'm on the call tonight. Sam Schrader helps me with all things Pendleton Redevelopment Commission. He is not on the call tonight. So we'll go through the 3 different TIF areas, economic development areas that the town has. We'll talk about the life of the different areas, the estimated TIF, the obligations, and show how that compares to the revenue stream. When we get to the wellness center, I will bring up something at that point that was good. Actually, it was good to have that, to hear that conversation before I went through this, because it does impact that schedule that we have in here as far as our assumed timing for the full completion of the project and the TIF stream. So I'll talk through that when we get there. So that was good to have that conversation.
Good.
So the Pendleton EDA #1 is the first area that we'll talk about. This is the oldest area, created back in 1999, and it has an expiration in 2031. The bonds that are outstanding for that area mirror that expiration, so they basically reach maturity at the same time that the area expires. So the estimated TIF for 2020 is about $740,000. It's important to note that that is the estimate before you take into account potential impacts from COVID-19. So we're estimating some places could see a 5 or a 10% reduction in property taxes. It really kind of depends on the makeup of the different areas. It's community to community. But when we go into the next couple of schedules, I'll kind of talk through what that reduction in TIF may mean if it did come in less. And there's obviously also the timing issue with that, where not everybody probably paid their taxes by May 11th, as was required. With that waiver of tax penalties or penalties for not paying your property taxes, I think a number of businesses have taken advantage of that because they have that right too. And that's also something that we've seen a mixture of. There are some places I would have bet money that the company would not pay their taxes on time, just from history, and they paid their taxes on time. And then other places kind of surprised that someone didn't pay their taxes. So it'll be interesting to see when we get the first distribution in June, what that looks like. And then also, in July, there could be an additional distribution, and then also one in August to get that full TIF from the spring distribution in. We shouldn't see that timing issue with December's distribution. That's not to say 100% of the people will pay their taxes, but that won't be a delay caused, at least at this point in time, won't be a delay caused by somebody paying their taxes late, because there is not a waiver for December's taxes to waive that penalty of interest.
Hey, Brian, I have a question. Can you flip back to that last slide?
Yep.
The area, and I'm learning about TIF districts too, so that's why I just need a little clarification so I feel like I'm caught up. But it was created in '99, it expires in 2031. So that's the life of our TIF district, was from 99 to 31.
Correct.
And then the money that we get from that TIF district, I see our estimated one for 2020 is on that slide. If that accumulates, let's say we took that money and put it aside, and then in 2031, let's say in 2032, can we still spend that money? Is it ours, or do we have to spend it before that expiration date?
That is not something that we've had to deal with too much to this point in time with the TIF areas expiring, and there's been, I'd say, difference of opinions on that. I would say to me, the plan would be to spend it by the time you get to that point in time. Others have talked about, well, the TIF area expired, but you have that revenue. I don't know if Jeff has an opinion on that, or we could.
I think that, and my understanding, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the TIF district continues until 2031, or until the time in which all debt obligations roll off. And so my understanding is theoretically that the town could pledge the TIF funds in December of 2030 on a 10-year loan, and that would extend that obligation would extend that until 2041. Also, as far as hoarding the money, Brian, I think that then we'd run into some trouble on the presentation you're giving tonight, and that we can't hoard the money, and at that point we'd have to pass it through to the TIF districts.
Yeah, I think it's fine to if you've got a project, and we've got a couple of projects listed later on. If you have projects that the town is aiming for, accumulating any of that excess over a number of years to pay that or to do some pay-as-you-go projects makes sense. And that's fine, and we could show that and justify that. But you're right, if it just accumulated without any plans that the town had in the future to use those monies, that's where then I think Jeff's exactly right. You start to, well, why are you accumulating this? You have no plans. You're not going to use it for something. So, and it doesn't, it could be a number of infrastructure projects. If you had money, it could be, if there's another economic development project coming along, if there's an area in that, some parcels in the area where you think, well, that could develop, but we may need to provide them some incentives to have that where you could, accumulate money for that purpose as well. So there is some flexibility in that, but I think you do need to have and look kind of down the road. What is there a plan for this if we do have extra money in that area?
Okay. And then with the term expiration or the expiration date on that, are there ways to extend the life of a TIF? And that's a question too. Sorry, I'm
Yeah, no, really the expiration dates, that is more difficult to extend. If you had a parcel in that area, and we've seen this where you can pull parcels out of a TIF area, and then you could reestablish those parcels into a new TIF for a project. But those need to be parcels that currently really aren't generating TIF because you've got other obligations that are coming out of this TIF area. So you can't pull a parcel out that's generating TIF that's currently being used to pay the other bonds and then try to reestablish that and extend it. And when you extend it, you're resetting that base at that point in time also. So that would really only work if you did have some land, pulled out those parcels, made a new TIF area, so your base is really at the land value, then you've got your new 25-year life for those parcels.
With the Klipsch card site.
Yep.
Okay. And
exactly.
That's these questions I'm asking too, because we do have some new RDC members, and I think TIF is just kind of a complex topic anyway, so it's nice to have some refreshment during this conversation, so I appreciate.
Yeah, and just kind of real, basic. So when you establish the TIF area, you basically lock in. There's an annual adjustment that occurs with it slightly to account for trending, to neutralize the effect of trending, but you lock in whatever assessed value is there, and that still goes with the underlying taxing units to calculate their budgets. And then the TIF area simply captures that growth in assessed value that you've probably incentivized or you've built infrastructure to help bring in. And you're basically capturing that increase in that assessed value for up to 25 years. And then at the end of the TIF area, all that assessed value that you're capturing as increment then all goes to the underlying and overlapping taxing units, and it all goes into their budget at that point in time. There are, mechanisms along the way if the town ever wanted to pass through where they could get some of that assessed value along the way as a possibility. But we're not assuming that at this point in time. But that's kind of how, just big picture, how the TIF works. And there's different limits. The current limit, if you made a new TIF area, is 25 years from when you have your first obligation in that TIF area. So you could establish a TIF today in 2020, not issue any bonds till 2025, and then those bonds in 2025 could go out to 2050. So when we say a 25-year life, that's the assumption that a lot of times people establish a TIF at the same time do a bond issue, but it's not required. So you could set up a TIF and not issue bonds for a number of years, and then issue bonds down the road to start the clock in the TIF area.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
Yep. So then moving on, the couple obligations out of this area, a couple of bond issues, both done back in 2015. One is payable out of tax increment with the property tax backup. And then the other is the waterworks bond, which is tax increment and waterworks revenues, also with the property tax backup. And the property tax backup is very typical on TIF projects, just because a lot of times you don't have a very large or very diverse TIF area. And property tax is the most secure type of security out there for the bond buyer. So they take great comfort in having that as the ultimate backstop. If for some reason the TIF did go down and was insufficient, you could put a property tax in place in the future. These bonds also have debt service reserves as well, which is also very typical on TIF bonds. So those are the couple of 2015 bonds in this area. And then this next schedule shows the comparison of that estimated revenue. And we've just held that constant over the life of the bond issues. If additional development occurs out there, then that TIF number could obviously go up. It could also go down if the tax rate goes down for some reason, or if some of the assessed value goes away for some reason. This is assuming it's constant. And so this, in comparison to the about $40,000 of TIF and about the $570,000 of obligations, leaves you with about $170,000 a year of kind of cushion there. So either if there's underpayment by people or late payments by people, or it's money that you could accumulate for other projects, as you mentioned, Rachel. So under this scenario, that's about 130% coverage. Just for information, if it was a 10% reduction in TIF, so that 742 becomes $667,000. Then your coverage is about 117%. So 10% reduction in revenues cost you about 12-13% coverage. So you would still have, enough money coming in to make those payments. Your additional TIF available would go from about 170,000 to closer to about 95,000. So you can see it would eat away at a pretty good amount of that kind of excess coming in out there. So we'll want to keep an eye on what actually is occurring this year with the June distribution, and then what happens in July and August, just to kind of see where it is falling out, to see if there's any issues or anything like that as we get to the second payment later on in the year as well. So just keep an eye on that.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
How is it figured on the annual debt payments? It looks like there's a different dollar figure each year.
Yep. Yeah. So when we issued the bonds, we have an amortization schedule, and it's not like a mortgage where every year your payment is the same. There is a fixed rate bond where it has the payments are not changing, but there is a different bond or a different interest rate for each maturity. So when we issued the bonds, the maturities out in 2030 had a higher interest rate associated with those than the payments out in 2017 or 2018. And if you just think if you did a 30-year mortgage, it's a higher rate than a 15-year mortgage. So it's usually a laddered approach. So you start, and I could, if you want to get into the great details, I could bring up the amortization here at the end.
When it goes from, in 2021, it goes from 566 up to 570 in 2022, and then back down to 567. It's
Yep.
kind of a roller coaster, and I was trying to figure out what it was that affected that roller coaster for the up and downs.
Yeah, and then the roller coaster there, and you'll see those are pretty tight to being within about we aim for about a $5,000 window, and that's because each the bond is a $5,000 increment. So for example, in 2020, it's 572,000. That could be almost the same principal amount as in 2021. Maybe it's $5,000 more, but that's why there's that little roller coaster where it tries to stay pretty consistent and pretty constant. But it's because we're operating with $5,000 increments. So, if we had like $1,000 increments, which are done on some smaller bonds, then that would be a much smaller roller coaster, but you would still kind of see it where each year would be a little bit of variability with it. So that's why you're having that difference where it goes up and down a little bit, but it is trying to stay pretty close to within a $5,000 range.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So then this is just basically the graphical representation from now until out to the end of the bonds. As you can see, the debt service is pretty level. A little bit of a difference each year, but overall trying to keep that as a pretty level debt service stream. And same thing with the revenues, and then that would be the end of the TIF area, the end of the bond issues at the same point in time. And then the next TIF area is the consolidated redevelopment area. And this is a good example of where the TIF area was established, and then we modified it a few months, about a year later. But to this point in time, there's not an obligation for that TIF area. So while that TIF area has been created, you will receive about $70,000 of TIF this year. It does not have an expiration date associated with that TIF area yet. So it's still open until an obligation for that area comes along. So that's a good example of just kind of the 25-year clock has not really started on that TIF area yet. And so that money could be accumulated for a project, could be used for pay-as-you-go expenses. So that does have some flexibility in that area at this point. And then the final area, and this is the one that ties in with the Wellness Center, established back in 2018, and then this does go out. You'll see it goes out 25 years, out to 2043. We had estimated when we did the bond issuance that it would be fully assessed January 1 of 2020 for taxes payable next year. So hearing that the project, kind of had that slowdown and should be done this summer, that will now be fully assessed in 21 for pay 22. So keep that in mind. And this is just a summary of the bond issue, as I mentioned. So out here is that kind of TIF stream in comparison to the debt payments. And you'll see that we have estimated about $280,000 of revenue next year with the $124,000 payment. So really excellent coverage at that point in time. But since it will not be fully assessed January 1 of this year, one of the things we'll need to take a look at is talking with the county and figuring out what, I guess here's a question for the group. If we look back to January of this year, how far along was it at that point in time? Was it pretty far along that they might have done a partial assessment on it, or was it just hardly anything at that point?
There was quite a bit of the structure.
Okay.
It was under roof and almost secured with the exterior walls.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Right. So I don't know how substantial the county would view that as in terms of assessment.
Okay. Well, we can reach out to the county and ask them about that. I mean, the other thing is the land value will go up, so there will be money coming from the land as well. But that's something we'll want to take a look at, because this is the bond supported by TIF, and then it does also have a property tax backup on it. If for some reason that TIF is not going to be there next year, then we're going to need to figure out what that alternative plan is to make that payment next year, because that payment really can't be delayed. Those payments, because the building will be occupied and used this August, which is good. So with our first payments next year, we'd capitalize interest up till then, but really we'll need to take a look at that and just make sure it looks like there's going to be enough TIF either from last year and this year with the land, and then even the land we'd have for next year as well. So we'd have to just kind of take a look at that and see what that revenue stream is going to look like, and then talk about that while you guys are in the budget process.
Okay.
Hey, Jeff, quick question. I mean, you might not have this right off the top of your head, but if you would, let's go back and look at the contract we signed with Card, because I believe even if there was a delay in the construction or anything like that, they would be making payments regardless. If my memory is correct.
That is correct.
I think you're right, Craig. That's a good point to bring up. Yep. Yeah, and I was going to see if I could bring that up real quick. But I think you're right. That was part of that whole negotiation with the numbers as we went back and forth.
And Brian, you bring up a very good point here. Maybe we need to have a conversation with Card saying, hey, remember how this thing went? We got a TIF thing going on here that payments have to be made regardless. So we're still in this thing with you 100%, but contracts were signed.
Yeah, and I think it would be good to, that doesn't need to be done right now, but right. Some point in time this year, planting the seed, reminding them that, hey, maybe the time to do that is after we get the information this summer for what your TIF will actually look like next year. We'll have an idea then. Is it going to be $100,000 where it almost covers it, so it's a little bit of a payment from them, or is it going to be $30,000 and they have a significant amount that they have to write a check for next year? And then approaching them and reminding them and telling them plan for this because next year you're on the hook for it.
Yeah. Because we can't get behind on this. The town of Pendleton can't get behind.
No, and the property tax there is really, I'm glad that you brought that up, really there just as the ultimate backstop in case the TIF went away, they went away and didn't exist. But as long as they are around and, we don't ever have a plan to ever get to that. And that's why that coverage is so high on there also, was if something happened down the road, if you had good years up towards the front, you would build up some cash to cover yourself also.
Cool. Thank you, man.
No, that's an excellent point though. And then that just shows kind of that same comparison where the TIF is there, and then the lease rental bonds. And part of it also was there was conversations about, some additional projects. And so that would help with some of those projects, with some of that excess revenues in the future. And these are just a couple of the projects that we had last year and have these in here now. If there's additional projects that you guys have thought of or would like added, we could add that, as we go into next year as well. And these projects can change from year to year. People's thoughts, people change, and people's priorities change, and projects change. So just because they're on here one year doesn't need to be on here the next year. If the town has changed kind of their priorities or has changed what they want to use the TIF for. And then the last couple of slides, just real big picture, reminding people, overlapping tax units. I think I've used that phrase a number of times. So that's all the entities that are providing a tax rate that then is used to generate those TIF dollars of town, school, library, the county, township. All those rates are captured to calculate and to generate that revenue stream for the TIF area. And then sometimes there's conversation about what's that impact on other units. During the time that the TIF is being captured, there are some benefits that are immediate for units. There could be personal property that's not being captured. That AV would flow through to the taxing units for the calculation of their budgets. As I mentioned, TIF AV at some point in time, and that's an annual decision. If down the road you decide you want to pass through, that does not tie your hands for every year thereafter. I will just say when you do pass, if you did ever pass through, I always suggest you do take a look down the road and are you comfortable passing that through? Because I really don't like to see kind of that yo-yo effect that you pass through one year and then you decide the next year we're not going to pass through. So it just kind of messes with tax rates. So while it is an annual decision, and there's always reasons you could pull it back, if a large taxpayer left or something. Typically, you want to be comfortable if you're passing that through, that you're passing that through. With those different types of businesses come jobs, and that increases local income taxes, and that does flow through to the units. And then if there is ever a referendum put in place, operating or the debt referendum, the TIF assessed valuation that's captured to generate the TIF is not exempt from that. And so that assessed value would actually be used in the calculation of that revenue stream for if the school issued a referendum bond. So they do get the benefit of using that captured AV in that calculation of those tax dollars. So that's a pretty significant benefit for them in some areas. And then after the TIF ends, as I mentioned, that increased assessed value, that all flows through to the tax base and would then be there to help offset tax rates. So that could reduce tax rates a lot of times, or some of the smaller TIF areas that may be there to kind of offset that 1 year increase in somebody's max levy, for example, where maybe that rate was going to go up a couple of percent. You pass through the assessed value, kind of flatlines it. So it really depends on the size and scope of the TIF area and how much assessed valuation there is to be passed through or to be generated at the end of the life of the TIF area. So those are the slides that we prepared. So I don't know if there's any questions or anything that we need to go back over from anybody. Oops.
Nothing on our end.
Okay, well, if there are any questions, that come up afterwards, feel free to reach out, and then we'll stay in touch with the other activities that are coming up and keep an eye on the taxes that are coming in from this first distribution, and we'll talk with the county about the wellness project and see what that assessment may look like.
Cool. Thank you for your help on this, Brian. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
Do I need to do anything, Rachel, or do you just, if I sign off, do you just get control back, or I don't know?
Let's hope so.
All right. Well, if not, I canceled your meeting quickly. No. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Oops.
You might want to not share your screen anymore before you.
Yeah, we're bugging out. It's all good stuff here. Oops. I don't know why it didn't let me get rid of it. There we go. It won't let me exit.
Brian, you're still there. There you go.
He's gone. I was like, hey, he's stuck with us tonight regardless, huh?
Whether he wants to be or not.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we got that was new business. We got that out of the way, so good deal.
Yeah, so we can go ahead and back up now.
Yeah. Interstate Quadrant Master Plan?
Yes, so there's information in your Google Drive, or for the ones that are here, I've printed that information out for you too. Kimley Horn was at our last RDC meeting in February, and I know that they were here at the end of 2019 as well. And they presented information about doing what we're calling the Interstate Quadrant Master Plan. And just a quick refresher since we've all been, in quarantine. This quadrant master plan is something that, we don't necessarily have to go with Kimley Horn. They've been a great firm that we've worked with in the past. They've done our downtown revitalization plan. They did our bike and pedestrian master plan, and we've had several really good projects that have come out of those plans. So, they've been a good community partner for us. They had also applied to work on the park and recreation master plan. And while they were very good on being design heavy, and they are great designers, the park was really looking for a financial component to it. And that's why they ended up, I think they were in the top 2 for potentially being hired by the park as well. So, but the park did end up going in a different direction. However, Kimley Horn did come and do a couple presentations about a quadrant plan and what that would mean for Pendleton. And from staff's perspective, my perspective on it is, it would be in our town's best interest to figure out what we want as a community out at the interstate, rather than it being driven by someone from the outside coming in and telling us, we want to do a truck stop here or this and that. Not necessarily that a truck stop would get approved, but if we have a vision for what we want our interchange to look like in the future, we are more likely to get what we want as the town of Pendleton than if we don't have a plan in place. Kimley Horn would really be taking a deeper dive in and looking at limitations with drainage, showing where we want roads to be laid out, where we want drainage to go, and things that are in our best interest, so that when developers do come to Pendleton, we can guide them in the right way, and we can have them placed in areas that are going to be a better fit for us and the way that we want to move forward as a community. So as part of this project, they would be doing that market analysis, which I believe there's a sheet in there that kind of talks about that a little bit, showing what types of industries and businesses would be more suited to Pendleton based on our location, and things like that. And then they would also be looking at that design component too of, where parts and pieces will be laid out in the future. And I think it's important to know that at the end of the day, if it gets built out, when it gets built out, it may not look exactly like our master plan does. If they do this project for us, they give us this grand scheme, this vision of what we say we want. It may not look like that 100% at the end of the day, but we will have at least a blueprint of where we want to go. And I think it gives us a lot more control of our future than if we don't have one. So obviously I'm an advocate for a project like this, but I think we need to discuss it a little bit further. And I think the financial piece of it will be something we need to decide on, how we're going to pay for something like this moving forward. I think TIF money is a very appropriate use of funds for a project like this. And that's something that we would have to go back to Brian then and add it to that list of projects that he had. But I guess we just need to kind of discuss how we want to move forward with this. If we would like to work with Kimley Horn, if we want them to give us a better cost, or give a cost estimate to us, let us know what the process would be, time frames and things like that. So
is this the first stab we've taken at this, Rachel? Is Kimley Horn our first group to step up and say, yeah, we'll do this?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they really are. And, even with hiring a firm to do this type of work, I think it depends on how we feel comfortable moving forward. And Jeff, I sometimes forget, we have to advertise things at different points in time, depending on how much money we are looking at spending. But, if we need to, we can do a call for projects or an advertisement for what we're looking for, and then do an interview process if necessary, and go forward that way.
Generally on things like this that are services, you have carte blanche. I don't recall if the town has any set procedure by ordinance, but under state law with services, you can use anybody you want without going through the public purchasing. So we should be good however we want to go from a business standpoint.
Okay. And I don't think the town does.
I don't either. I haven't seen that. It would be, I don't know why we would necessarily hamstring ourselves by doing that. So
I don't either. I think the times that we have to go through an interview process with firms is when we're using state or federal funds on a project. And other than that, we've been able to hire who we think is appropriate.
Or tax money. So what's the timeline on this? What are we? I apologize. This is the first time I've seen this.
Okay.
Do we have some time to study this and read through it?
Yeah. So I guess what I'm kind of proposing is, digest it, take a look at it. And what I could do in the meantime is get back in touch with Kimley Horn and say, give us some more information about costs and your time frame. And we can talk about, I'll invite them back for our next redevelopment commission meeting, and we can continue the conversation with them on, how to move forward. But I do think, it's been kind of a shame that we have had this pandemic happen, because it would have been nice to, get things rolling at the beginning of the year, but we are where we are, and it's all right. And we still have time to, get a project moving forward. So, but I think we should really seriously consider it. And I'm really hoping too, with the pandemic, that, things residential, from the residential perspective in Pendleton, things are getting very exciting. And we have a lot of home builders that are coming to the area that are very interested in building homes in Pendleton. And the more rooftops that we see coming in, we're going to see a lot more of the commercial component coming to Pendleton to capture those households. And, so I think we really seriously to move forward with a project like this and figure out how to pay for it and get it done so that we're prepared now when the commercial piece of this really starts hitting us.
Rachel, we need to have a master plan. One, that we don't cut off the small businesses going into town, that is a bloodline, and also be mindful what happened at exit 13. They've already cut all that up, so they ruined some of their development. And then what happened in Fishers is landlocked now. And if we can get a master plan and have a vision, and may change as we go, but at least we have a direction and how we're going to get there. I definitely agree we should have some kind of master plan. And like I said, whatever we do, it needs to feed the downtown and feed the small businesses and be able to grow both places.
And that's one of the things I like about Kimley Horn, is that they do know how much we value our downtown and how important our local businesses are to Pendleton. And I know that one of their key pieces of this will be, how do we develop the interstate quadrants while being mindful that we have this downtown that's just a couple miles down the road, because we don't want to kill our downtown by moving everything out to the interstate. So there is this unique balance that we are going to have to figure out on how do we have both. And I think they're very capable of helping us figure that out.
That would be really important as a piece of this, whoever does it. You're absolutely right. And just for the folks that haven't been on the commission previously, and I keep harping on this, but we talked about it time and time and time again over the years. Fishers is on its way to Pendleton in a hurry. And if we don't do something like this, if we don't have a plan, they're going to determine a plan for us. So it is a good idea. If Kimley Horn's the group to go with, good. If not, we'll find somebody else. But I agree with David and Rachel. Let's.
Yeah, I agree.
And can we put on the agenda for next meeting to come back together after everybody has studied it?
Yes.
And make a decision on, at least get the numbers from Kimley Horn and let's check this out at the next meeting. Make a decision on how to go with this.
And having
Steve, I'll cut you off.
we'll tie into the marketing as we're marketing the city and what businesses we're wanting to draw in.
Okay. Well, I will continue moving forward with Kimley Horn and invite them back for the next RDC meeting. See if they can have some more get some numbers together for us and some time frames, just a more fleshed out. Okay.
What's next? Revolving loan program.
Right. This was another one we talked about briefly at our last RDC meeting, and I just don't want it to fall off and let's forget about it. So I'm keeping some of these things on the agenda just so we don't forget about them. But this is something I think we need to look at this year. We had talked before, and Steve and Craig, I think you were involved in the Historic Preservation Commission meeting and joint RDC meeting where we talked about, what wasn't working and how to maybe make this program work a little bit better. And, I think that, with the pandemic, we probably need to look at this a little more seriously and a little more quickly. Like it should be maybe more of a priority for us to kind of revamp the program to make sure that it's something that works for Pendleton. And if you guys have any thoughts for it.
Was this the revoting we talked about last time that had to do with business?
It was basically a business loan for any business in Pendleton that they could do improvements to the exterior of their structures or the interior. No, it was anything in any business district in Pendleton. So that included the downtown or planned business or industrial areas of Pendleton. But again, with it being revamped, if there's an area that we want to focus on more than another area, the way that the ordinances are written, it's very flexible in what the RDC wants to do with it. The town council gave you guys a lot of flexibility in how to run the program, so it can be as general as you guys want. So
Not being utilized as focusing for now.
it's never been used, not been used at all. So, I don't know if it is because our residents just don't, or our business owners don't need it, or if it's a program that it's modeled after the Anderson program, which I think has been successful. So, I'm just not quite sure, what's not working for Pendleton, but I think we need to look at it and try to find something that works, that is more user-friendly.
We also talked about the fact that some may not even know we have it. It
Right.
may not have been advertised properly. So
Right.
we do need to get the word out. But yeah, it's at the last meeting, at that joint meeting, everyone discussed how it was somewhat onerous for business owners to come up with the requirements that we had and everything. So we were thinking about going in and simplifying it. You're right, Rachel. We need to do that, and with the virus thing, we probably need to do it immediately. Do we do that? Can we do that as a commission, or can we do that as a task group of the commission?
If we could have a maybe smaller group of the commission that would be interested in diving a little deeper into it. I know staff-wise that would really help me out a lot. I don't feel like I have a lot of time to put right now. So if there was a couple committee or commission members that could take this on, I hope it moves.
I'll be happy to be a part of that.
Thank you. Dave said that he would be happy to help as well.
Thank you, Dave.
I will work on sending you guys all the information and links to the ordinances that relate to this, so you guys can take a look at it. And then if there's any other materials that you think you need, I'll try to send everything your way. And then if there's anything we're missing, let me know and I can find it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Update on the CED.
Yeah, so the CED, you guys did give Jeff Graham and I permission to work on that, and we did get to a place where we were able to get it signed, and we did sign that contract, and everything is official. And CED has been great working with us so far, so we're appreciative to have them as kind of an addition to Pendleton to help us out with economic development projects and economic development efforts. So I just wanted to give you guys just that little quick update that we're official. They're working for us. So thank you.
That's good news.
Yeah, excellent.
Yep. And then the last thing, the contract with GDI. I'm not sure how much you guys remember of I know we reviewed the minutes and all that good stuff, but We did have just some issues with contracts with GDI, and Jeff Graham and I have been working through that a little bit. And Jeff, I don't know, can you give just a quick update of where we left off on that?
Yes, Rachel and I both communicated with Mike Sheik at GDI, and there will have to be an addendum to the current contract because there were some things that were done that, as the minutes indicated, we talked about, seems like forever ago now, but there were some things done outside of that contract, and GDI is wanting to continue to work with the town on it. Seems agreeable. Rachel and Kayla have both given me some information to get that done, and Mike's organization seems ready to stay involved rather than get sideways with the town. I anticipate you'll have something to review prior to your next meeting, and hopefully execute that addendum with GDI to keep the bargain going that the town entered into a couple years ago.
And then you had mentioned at the last meeting, do we need to review our thoughts on work with GDI? Because we are working with, yes.
Why we was paying $1,000 to do to a different company or something?
So GDI hired JM. So GDI is the company that the town of Pendleton hired to do marketing for the Falls Point Business Park. And then GDI hired JLL to physically put the materials together. And money only gets exchanged. And Jeff, if I'm off base on any of this, please speak up. But my understanding is that if there's any property sold, that's when GDI gets paid. That's when JLL gets paid.
That's correct. JLL is good. GDI has an obligation, and we didn't. And they didn't get the chance to. They have to pay the commission despite not making the sale. So that's really what it comes down to. And so it's the town is going to have to. It's my thought is the town is going to have to make GDI whole, and I don't think it's going to be the end of the world, but something we don't want to repeat.
Right.
Okay.
And that issue was the wellness center after the town had signed the contract with GDI, and the only it was not a listed project that the town had already been working on. So the town basically went out of its contract and started working with Klipsch Card, and then sold property that GDI did not get any money for. So we stepped out of that, and so we just need to fix it. And like GDI has been great working through it, and isn't too upset with us. So yes, but I do think Dave, what you said at the last meeting is maybe we do need to revisit that contract for the future too, because if we have CED working with us that is doing marketing efforts for us, are we paying multiple people to do the same thing?
Right.
Good point. Anything else on that?
Not that I
Okay, any other topics of discussion from anyone? All right, next meeting, June 25th. Hopefully we'll all be together.
Yeah.
That will be Zoom. And if I don't have any objections, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion?
We got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Rachel, thank you so much for everything you're doing. We know you're short-staffed, and we really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night, everyone.